Chapter 71 The Strength of Faith. There was a family in Bombay and they were very devout and staunch followers of Shri Gurudev. A youth of that family, on account of bad company, had turned into an atheist. He wasted almost all his time roaming around with his vagabond friends, though he had to appear for his annual examination. Thus he was obliged to go to the examination hall without proper preparations, and as a last resort he mentally surrendered unto Shri Gurudev and took along with him a small photo of Pujya Shri to the examination hall. Then he took a look at the question paper with constant mental chanting of Gurudev's name. Since the arithmetic paper was tough, though he read it again and again, he could not comprehend it. Finally, when he was totally confused, he placed Gurudev's photo on the floor and fully prostrated himself before it for 2 minutes, to the astonishment of all the professors and students in the hall. Then he got up and replaced the photo in his pocket. Next, to his surprise, he found that he knew answers to all the questions that were asked by the paper setter. He briskly went through the paper and solved all the problems. When the results were declared, to everyone's and his own surprise, the student was named as the top scorer in the class. Truly, we never know how high we are till we are called to rise in devotion, and then, if we are true to the plan, our stature touches the sky. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 72 Grace on Nannu Maharaj. At the time of the second eye camp in Guna, Nannu Maharaj was engaged for driving a jeep. He was a Brahmin by caste, simple by nature, of frail body and slightly stooping forward. Being a Brahmin, the suffix Maharajji was added after his name. Initially, he used to procure cow's milk for Gurudev, and later, by the grace of Gurudev, he was made the driver of the Hariji. On festive occasions, Gurudev gave him sweets, fruits, clothes, etc. Maharaj used to remain on duty round the clock. He would do Gurudev's bidding even in the midst of night. Pujya Shri had to travel at all hours of the day, and Maharaj would drive him all around. During a journey, whenever they halted, he would unload the luggage and even get water from the well. His major defect was his reckless driving. He would not slow down on potholes, and at times he would apply the brake suddenly and he would lose control of the steering. Pujya Shri would sit in the front seat beside the driver and show him the way as though the entire route was known to him. On outward journeys, Nannuji could not remember anything, though he had to return by the same route a short while later. Once Gurudev kept absolutely quiet, and Nannuji lost his way. Though he crisscrossed through lanes and by-lanes, he could not find his way back to their destination, the Dharamshala. Finally realizing his confusion, Gurudev looked aside and smiled. Now Nannuji asked Gurudev about the route. Assuming a pose of mock seriousness, he said, "You are going to the Dharamshala every day since the last 2 days, and yet you cannot remember the proper route. Now I will have to change the driver." Maharajji replied with his characteristic simplicity and humility, "Bhagwan, in the morning you bathe in the Ganga and in the evening you bathe in the Jamuna. How can I remember the route?" At this, Pujya Shri could not control his laughter, and after a hearty laugh, he said, "All right, henceforth you too can bathe in the Ganga and the Yamuna. This road will take us straight to the Dharamshala." And he showed the correct route to Nannuji. Once a crudely tied bag fell out from Nannuji's bedding. Pujya Shri asked, "What does this contain?" With tear-filled eyes, Nannuji replied, "Bhagwan, these are pieces of sweets and dry fruits that you gave for prasad. I saved them for my grandchildren, to give to them when I return home." And as he opened the satchel, pieces of sweets, dry fruits, etc., swarming with ants, fell out from it. Pujya Shri became emotional. And since that day, whenever Nannu Maharaj would go home on leave, Gurudev would send fresh fruits, sweets, etc. for his grandchildren. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 73, The Salvation of a Troubled Spirit. With blessings from Gurudev, Amlani Bhai of Rajkot had shifted to Baroda. In Baroda, he soon obtained a new house. It was lying vacant only for his use. The house was very old and was infested by serpents, and about 2 to 3 times a month they would see the frightening sight of a snake. Out of sheer desperation and fright, Amlani Bhai appealed to Gurudev when he happened to visit Baroda and said, Bapu, I am greatly troubled by the snake and I cannot sleep in peace. Gurudev replied in a firm tone, Amlani, do not worry. Henceforth you will not see the snake. And from that day onwards, the snake was never seen. And even today, Amlani Bhai stays in peace in that house. At Warden Road in Bombay, there used to be a beautiful squat bungalow situated amidst a well-maintained garden with magnificent marble statues placed all around. This reflected the artistic temperament of the owner. On the grounds of that bungalow, in due course, the construction work of Surya apartment was to commence, and at the request of Walji Bhai, Gurudev had agreed to attend the foundation ceremony. He came there on the night of 16th May 1965 and said, The owner of this bungalow has died here, but his spirit is still wandering around in this premises. May God rest his soul in peace. Next day, after the foundation ceremony was over, with a terrifying sound, a statue near the staircase broke into 2 pieces, and Gurudev said, Well, now that restless spirit has been liberated. Now everyone understood as to why that statue had been standing in total isolation, untouched by anyone, had exploded in that manner. Thus, due to the auspicious arrival of a saint, the wandering and restless soul had obtained its liberation at last. Bapu, Amlani Bhai said, I was staying in this haunted bungalow since the last 1.5 months. I could never sleep in peace, and so I used to keep your photo near my head during the night. Gurudev said, Amlani, you had the courage to stay here for 45 days, but no other person in your place could have stayed here even for one night. Amlani Bhai bowed his head in gratitude and reverence. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 74, Faith and Devotion. On 5th September 1965, when war broke out with Pakistan, Gurudev, interrupting his solitary stay at Virpur, started for Pathankot. Before his departure, he left a message for his devotees. This war is terrible, and God alone can save our country. Yet, by His grace, things will subside by the 19th. Throughout the war, he stayed near the combat zone, but none can say what he did. However, the war did not end as predicted by him. Then he stayed in a village, Kalayat, on the Rajasthan border. Gurudev had not taken any provisions for that journey. He managed only with a diet of seasonal fruits. The mother of the manager of the dharamshala in which he stayed was a kind and devout lady. When she observed for several days that Gurudev was neither going out nor cooking any meals, she told Gurudev, Baba, in this delicate health of yours, you should not remain without real food. I will prepare chapati and milk and you will have to eat it. At first, Gurudev politely declined, but he had to bow down before Mataji's love and said, Ma, please do not apply ghee to my chapatis. When the dinner was ready, Ma sent word to him and spread a leaf plate before him for dinner. And from the big stack of chapatis, she took out his special ones. She said, These are prepared in milk, and I kept them in the midst of the stack to preserve its softness. Gurudev smiled, and Ma had, by placing the milk chapatis among the ordinary ones, had got them wilted at the edges. But as Shri Ram ate those berries which were first tasted by Shabri, due to her extreme devotion, Similarly, Gurudev quietly finished the chapati as Ma looked on with approval and contentment. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 75. Visit to the Jail. Those shunned by society were the first to be adopted by Gurudev. If someone asked him about it, he would say, I am concerned for these people, for that simple reason that if Mahatmas began to despise them, they would have no one to turn to. They are mine and I am theirs. On the 1st of June 1966, Gurudev visited the Rajkot jail. At his darshan, several prisoners wept with gratitude. Pujya Shri said, I had a strong desire to meet you, and I am extremely pained to see you as prisoners. In fact, you alone are responsible for this condition. Forgetting your natural and self-reliant way of life, you have misguidedly adopted these unlawful ways. The law can overpower us only when our minds are vitiated by bad thoughts. Be sorry for what you have done in the past and avoid bad company after release from this place and lead a righteous life. I am sure that you will be able to build a bright new future for yourself. My prayers are that God will grant you happiness. My blessings will always be with you. When Pujya Shri left the place, it seemed as though the prisoners were shedding tears of repentance at his feet. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 76. Gurudev in Ganesh Puri. At the loving and insistent invitation of Shri Muktanandji Maharaj, Gurudev went to visit his ashram in Ganesh Puri. Muktanandji greeted him with pranam. Coincidentally, Shri Ranchoddasji, along with his disciples, had also come over there. Though Pujya Shri had a persistent cough, he carried on the conversation pleasantly. One of the disciples of Shri Rangji started wondering to himself, our Maharaj Shri says that Ranchoddasji is a Param Siddha yogi, yet his frail body and this nagging cough raises doubts. At that time, Shri Rangji spoke out, this is the same great saint and Param yogi about whom I have been telling you. You would hardly be able to recognize him if you happened to meet him along the road. At the moment he is sizzling with fever and harassed by coughing fits. And yet it is not a bodily illness as we know it. He is undergoing all these pains and sufferings on account of having taken over the pains and sufferings of others, whom he considered as his own. With these words, he laughed heartily. Pujya Shri joined in that laughter. Indeed, that meeting of the Mahatmas was a memorable one. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 77. Various aspects of Gurudev's personality. Gurudev's fame and the sphere of his work were expanding rapidly, and thus he rarely found time to visit the surrounding villages. On such occasions, when he did find the spare time for visits, he was obliged by the villagers' insistent love to accept dinner and lunch invitations. At times, from 15 to 17 homes per day. It was obligatory for him to have 3 rotis and a cup of dal at each of the homes. This process continued from morning to noon, and occasionally he would be obliged to accept dinner invitations as well. We could only wonder at such yoga-induced tolerance of his body, for starving for days and then being able to eat, for the pleasure of these simple adoring souls, such unbelievable quantities without any apparent ill effect on his health. Perhaps he could invoke Vaishnava and thus be able to undertake such superhuman feats. Once, while Pujya Shri was inside his room in his daily niyam, with closed doors, 2 friends had come to the ashram for his darshan. They sat there gossiping about the defects of others, outside of Gurudev's room. They got so carried away by their base preoccupation that they lost all sense of place and time. On opening the doors at the appointed hour, Gurudev came out of his room and said, one goes to a temple and offers flowers. This ashram too is like a temple, where you should offer the flowers of your true devotion and not the gossip about others. Good thoughts are essential to maintain the sanctity of this place. Both of them were crestfallen and humbly asked for forgiveness. Jai Bhagwan. Chapter 78, Incidents from Gurudev's Life. Influenced by Gurudev's piety and devoutness, the Muslims of Banda, who were converts from Hinduism, wished to return to their original faith but were worried as to who would undertake the task of their reconversion to Hinduism. Gurudev said, "Do not worry, I will convert you to Hinduism." The news that Gurudev was going to undertake this task after scriptural purification spread far and wide, and hundreds of Muslims were ready for the reconversion to Hinduism. Both the Hindu and Muslim communities were extremely agitated over the issue. Muslims, being more angry, were the first to approach Gurudev. Pacifying them, Pujya Shri explained, "Please try to understand. Musalman means Musalam plus Iman, that is, one who is firm in his faith. These people have already lost their faith in Islam. What would be the point of keeping them in your religion by mere compulsion?" The mullahs walked off quietly. The Hindus came next. Pacifying them, Gurudev said, "These people were once Hindus, with our own cultural and religious background. And if Muslims have converted them merely by saying the word Bismillah, then don't you believe that our own Ram mantra is strong enough to bring them back to their original faith?" This left them speechless. Finally, all who voluntarily came forward were purified as prescribed by our scriptures and reconverted to Hinduism with proper ceremony. Pujya Shri was very particular about self-help, dignity of labor, and cleanliness. Once during a car journey, since the driver did not wash the car for 3 days, while the driver had gone elsewhere, Pujya Shri washed it himself, thereby setting an example for the driver. Once, when he was on a train journey with Thakur Bhai, they had to change trains at the Nagda junction. Their train had just reached Nagda, and the connecting train was about to leave within a few minutes. Thakur Bhai shouted, "Coolie, coolie," but realizing the urgency of the situation, Gurudev carried all their luggage to the connecting train, even before Thakur Bhai could realize as to what was happening. Had they waited even for a few seconds more for the coolie, they would have missed the connecting train. On festive occasions, devotees would bring large quantities of offerings and Gurudev would deal with them appropriately. Perishables like sweets, etc., would be distributed among the devotees on the same day. Fruits were sent for use by Mahatmas, whereas dry fruits were given as prasad to devotees at the end of the day. He treated everyone on equal footing, whether he was a king, a minister, rich or poor, and when the occasion so demanded, he would tell each one of them the truth on their face without fear or favor. Jai Bhagwan.
Sarve Sukhina Santu, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukhamapnuyat.